Ready?
Yes. Would you like to give us the clap as a return? No applause.
Hey!
There we go.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 24 of Swords, Boards and Beards.
Hooray!
I have returned
He's back, baby.
from the demise of illness,
Yes.
the clutches of morbidity,
The pox was upon thee.
a strange malady, my lord. Yeah, I'm back.
He's back. Orky Adam's back. We're going to have to question this. Maybe
I haven't
year
played
2.
Orcs for a long time now.
I was going to say, for year 2. Like, what was it? Batman year 0. So for Adam year 2, do we change you to Space Marine Adam?
Oh, that's I don't like the ring of that.
No. On a number of levels, I'm not happy with that.
No, I'm not happy with that.
Adam's back. He's no longer ill. He hasn't got the box. However, I lied to you last week because I said that Toby would be back this week. And he's not. Because ironically,
he's gone to bloody Rome.
Having improvised last episode because Adam was sick, we then improvised our episode about improvisation. And we went, yeah, you're coming back for another thing next week. And he's not. So we're improvising again.
Hi. Welcome back.
Yeah. No, you're very welcome back. Toby will be back next time, maybe. Who knows?
Who
because
knows?
we shake things up.
He's really a superhero and he's off doing crime
off
fighting.
Being an ultimate older cousin.
Yeah.
Good man.
Indeed.
Hooray. Finally, after apparently I watched the internet today, 6 years of waiting.
For what? The new series of Daredevil?
Daredevil's back, people. This week we're talking all things Man Without Fear.
The Devil of Hell's Kitchen.
Devil of Hell's Kitchen, because Born Again was launched this week. Warning ahead of time in case we forget, there may be spoilers ahead. So if you haven't watched at least the first episode of this new show, which is on Disney Plus, you may want to press pause, go and watch it, and then come back. Yeah. Just in case we slip up. We don't want to be a dick about it because going in spoiler free is better. But yes,
yeah, absolutely.
All things. And Adam's returned to tell us all of his infamous Daredevil stories.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was just waiting for your face then.
Don't,
like,
mate.
what
Don't
face?
spring that on me. I'm not ready to improvise. That was last week. I wasn't here for that.
That was right. Yeah. So in fact, I have things to look. I can do this. I have things.
You got tabs. You got notes.
I've got notes. Just so I can.
Professional podcast here at Swords, Boards and Beards.
Is it? We are excited about Daredevil. No, we are. It's we.
No,
aren't we?
we are. It's. I don't know about you, and I don't know about our audience, but like Marvel saturation has been a real, and fatigue associated with that has been a real thing for a long time. Like the new films are advertised and stuff, and I'm just like, I don't really care anymore. I'm done. I'm out. But then occasionally it brings me back in when I see a character that I personally have like really enjoyed over the years, or I have the books of and things like that. And Daredevil's one of them.
So we're going to kick off. I was thinking this, how to start, because we're going to kick off with Born Again, because we can do Daredevil as a whole.
Yeah.
Well, for those of you who don't know, if you're new, why would you not know this? Maybe don't give a hoot about Marvel. Daredevil was originally on Netflix as a show.
He was one of the first Marvel TV shows ever.
Yeah, he really was. Back in 2015.
He's too small a hero to put in a film, really. They did a Ben Affleck movie back in like 2003.
Wasn't that a mess?
And that was horrendous.
I mean, Michael Clarke Duncan as Kingpin.
He was great.
It was interesting. And Bullseye.
Colin Farrell was Bullseye, yeah.
But, yeah, 2015, the show came out.
For those of you who have seen Deadpool and Wolverine, that's where Jennifer Garner's Elektra comes from, was the 2003 Ben Affleck Daredevil.
Which was, again, another kind of kick in the balls.
She got her own film off of that, actually. There was an Elektra film. I never saw it.
You should have. It was interesting.
Was it?
No.
No, you're lying to me.
It was one of the best films ever made. It was the Citizen Kane of Marvel.
Was it? Move over, Infinity War.
Okay. Your homework between now
I'm
and
not watching that film. No.
90 minutes of have it on in the background while you're playing a video game.
Yeah,
you won't know the difference.
I'll do some painting or something.
Yeah, you won't know the difference.
But it's like the Halle Berry Catwoman movie.
That one I haven't seen.
Yeah, I heard that's really bad.
I've heard it's not the best.
Well, I did hear as well talking about we're going on tangent
really
already.
That's unlike us.
I know, but like she got Halle Berry got the Razzie Award for Catwoman, and she turned up to accept the Razzie Award with her Oscar she got for Monsters Ball. So she stood on the podium with her Oscar for Best Actress, accepting the worst actress from Razzies. Good on you, Halle Berry.
Amazing. Amazing. I love it. Yes. Daredevil. Came on screens in 2015 with Netflix. With Charlie Cox.
Who originally, I heard, came into audition for Foggy Nelson.
Interesting. They had Vincent D'Onofrio as the Kingpin.
Deborah Ann Wool as Karen Page.
Ellen Malden? No, I thought it was Jensen, sorry.
Eldon Jensen.
As Foggy. And Bernthal turned up in season 2 as Punisher, which was cool. And it was a really good show.
It was a really good show.
I was fascinated because Daredevil is one of those characters. If you were, throughout my life, if you want to sit me in the Marvel or the DC camp, if you made me, I'd be a Marvel boy. I know that.
Likewise.
I like some DC characters. I do like Batman. I like the Dark Knight stuff, all that kind of vibe. But I think it's
impossible to like superheroes and not like Batman.
Yeah. But I really like Marvel. But as a kid growing up, I read a lot of Spider-Man, and I read some. What else did I read? I read a bunch of Spider-Man. I read what I could find from the library because I didn't go to the comic.
X-Men. There's a lot of X-Men stuff about.
Yeah, and I did. The two. I was thinking this when I was doing the prep for the episode. Daredevil for me and the Fantastic Four were two I couldn't get my head around.
Okay.
They didn't gel with me. And I went, and I just didn't get them. Uh-huh. So when the show came out, for me, I went, well, I'll give it a go. Worst case scenario is I've wasted 50 minutes of my life.
Yeah.
I don't have to watch episode 2.
I'll watch one episode and leave it at that.
And then I was hooked. And I don't know what it was. And I know I've heard someone, I don't necessarily agree with this, called Daredevil was Marvel's answer to Batman. I don't quite agree with that. But,
I would argue Moon Knight is Marvel's answer to
Batman. I've never heard of him.
No, he's a newer character anyway.
But the tone of Daredevil got it right. The vibe, the city, the characters, the people, the violence.
Yeah. And we talked about it before we hit record this morning. I think one of the relatable things about Matt Murdock / Daredevil as a character is that he's relatable on a level that certain other superheroes aren't, because, well, other than being blind and having echo sense and being really good at fighting, that's about it. He's not flying around, he's not invincible, he's not shooting webs or lasers from his eyes. He's just a guy who can kick ass.
And after watching the show, I then did what I would do and go to the comics, and I realised how much of the tone they got right for the show.
Yeah.
The vibe and the style, which I appreciated for a show perspective, but never understood. Sometimes you'll get the tone is completely wrong. Like when Spider-Man Homecoming came out, I was like, yeah, this is fun, this works for Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. The tone is right. But the vibe and the violence worked.
But I personally think the vibe of Spider-Man worked better in the Sam Raimi stuff.
Yes, fair.
Like with the Tobey Maguire thing.
Yeah.
Maybe I think, let's move number 3 out of it when they were kind of losing their touch a little bit.
Marbles. Not touched. They lost their weirdness.
Yeah, but Spider-Man 1 and 2, the Sam Raimi stuff, felt a lot more growing up Spider-Man to me than the Tom Holland stuff. But I know it's aimed at a different generation. So Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire, I was around 12 when that started coming out. So, because it was the first 12A movie, Spider-Man. So you could go with your parents if you were under 12.
Yeah.
Which I think must have been about 11 when Spider-Man came out then, because I remember being like, I can go and see a 12 at the cinema and being really excited about it. But now, obviously, 12-year-olds now, Tom Holland's Spidey, do you know what I mean? And it's a lot more of that sort of vibe. And I think that's kind of what was important about Spider-Man, is that he was a kid. Do you know what I mean? He's just he's a teenager. Well, he should be most of the time in the comics. He's a teenager. Obviously, he's been around since the bloody 60s, isn't he? So he's not for sure anymore. He's like 80.
Yes, he still won't die because he can't. What's the rule you told me before?
No one stays dead in comic books except Uncle Ben.
So he might have died, but he's come back.
He's definitely died. Spider-Man's definitely died. Sure. Sandman's killed him. There's that really famous panel of him, Sandman, flying into Peter Parker's mouth and then exploding.
Nice.
And it's just his guts and sand pouring out of him, and he's just sort of on his knees and it's just bones and that.
Okay, can we have that on film somewhere?
I can find it.
No, on celluloid. Can they make that?
I don't think they allow that to happen, but
All those teenage girls cry. Did you see? And this is an episode I promised about Daredevil, but there was a clip on YouTube when the BAMF happened, when Thanos clicked his fingers in Infinity War.
Yeah.
And Holland disappeared. And there were, in fact, in the screening I was in, there were, oh look, oh he's just blown up. Sorry, this is a great audio. Adam's showing me the clip. But when Infinity War, Thanos clicked his finger and people started bamfing away.
Yeah.
And Holland bamfed away. There were girls in the cinema that cried.
Yeah. Well,
So,
he's
no,
a lot of people's like he was my first introduction to superheroes as a whole.
Yeah.
Saturday morning, Amazing Spider-Man cartoon, along with the X-Men, which is now X-Men '97, and the Invincible Iron Man and the Incredible Hulk were all like Saturday morning cartoons when I was a kid, and that's what got me like aware that these things existed. So,
enough about Spider-Man.
we're not here to talk about Spider-Man. We're here to talk about his good friend and lawyer,
which is
Matt Murdock.
Yes, because that was a good cameo. I enjoyed that. There's the tenuous link back to Daredevil. Was the cameo that he had.
Well, talking of tenuous links or webs,
go
on. Matt Murdock canonically is one of the only people outside of like the immediate circle that knows that Peter Parker is Spider-Man because he was his lawyer and could tell because he can like sense his like all his gubbins.
All his gubbins, which is interesting because they've wiped it in the MCU.
Mm-hmm.
So if Holland comes
does
back,
turn up as his lawyer, doesn't he?
He does. But after that, that's when they fixed the timeline and no one knew he was him. So will Murdock, who is bound to turn up in the film sooner or later,
well,
even be in
turn up in She-Hulk, didn't he?
And he'll be in the Avengers, the new Avengers, I'm sure, even a small part. But interesting to see whether he can sense.
It's a bit of a. I think it's one of the nice touches to Matt Murdock being a lawyer is that because of his sort of hyper senses, he can tell when people's lying to him. So
I did.
He can tell the whole your heartbeat's raised, you're elevated, you're sweating. I can sort of smell it, and therefore
that's true. That is. Yeah.
So that's good for a lawyer.
Yeah, that very helpful and could improvise on the fly. So the show ran for 3 seasons, and then they thought it was going to get more. And there was Jessica Jones, which I enjoyed, and there was also the Punisher stuff.
Well, it was Jessica Jones, the Punisher, Luke Cage, and Danny Rand, the Iron Fist.
We shouldn't mention Danny Rand, the Iron Fist.
Well, it was starting to go downhill at that point, and then because the idea was to get the Defenders together, which is a canonical team within the comic books, and it's Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, and Iron Fist. But they obviously needed their own series each in order to make it work as a show, and then I didn't even watch the Defenders.
Oh, the Defenders, the problem is I didn't. I've rewatched them all recently, building up to this. The Defenders was a waste.
Right.
Because, they wasted. Sigourney Weaver was the main bad guy.
Oh.
And she was wasted.
Yeah,
and they didn't need her because we're in spoiler territory here. For those who...
it's been out for several years now.
Those who watch Daredevil, Madame Gao, one of the criminal underworld people who work with Fisk, and the Hand, and she was linked to the Hand,
which is an organisation of ninjas.
And then it turns out that she was like the matriarch of this villain
crime family thing.
And it turns out she was just working for Weaver.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
It's supposed to be her own thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go. So the writing wasn't as good, and Danny Rand was just a squid.
Yeah.
For those of you who are not in Portsmouth, that's the one who whinges a lot, and it wasn't written very well.
I think the casting was interesting for Danny Rand as well, because it was all around that time of big hype from Game of Thrones, wasn't it? And it was like basically every Game of Thrones actor was being offered contracts left and right, regardless of how small the part was, because your link to Game of Thrones was going to gain you fans into your new thing from that. So the guy who plays Danny Rand is, I'm not knocking his acting abilities or anything like that, absolutely not, but like, it's the fella who plays, is it Renly Baratheon, the Knight of Flowers? He plays Danny Rand, and it's a bit like, oh, okay, interesting. You're supposed to be like this badass martial artist who can like set his hand on fire and punch through anything.
Yeah, the writing wasn't great, the direction wasn't great for them. But what was interesting, the 3 seasons of Daredevil, which had, basically, if you ignore, and I'm not saying this flippantly, it was Daredevil Season 1, Season 2, Defenders, Season 3, is Daredevil's timeline.
Oh, is that the timeline of it? Okay.
Because the end of Defenders, there's a canonical event where they think he's dead. Spoilers, it's been out for years.
Yeah.
And then Season 3 is when he comes back.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And it's literally like the morning after the Defenders. It's literally a few days.
What's interesting about the start of Daredevil, because it was the one that kicked off all of this sort of street level mini series thing that they did. And correct me if I'm wrong here, you've watched it a lot more recently than I have. Isn't it built off the back of the first Avengers film? Where they're like, aliens attack New York.
What's fascinating...
They mention it's like the event or something like that.
And that's a licensing issue. Rights issue. So they don't mention it in word. Well, they kind of do, but also Ben Urich, who's the reporter in this, works for the Daily Bulletin.
Not the Bugle.
Because they didn't have the rights to use the name.
They didn't have the rights to use the
They
Bugle.
would now, but they didn't. But on his office wall, there's copies of the Daily Bugle, the Bugle, the Bulletin, with an article about the Hulk.
Yeah.
An article about the event, i.e. Avengers, the
first Avengers film, yeah.
And so on and so forth. And they do mention it, so it is canonically linked.
Yeah.
And will always be part of that timeline. It wasn't officially allowed to be.
No, because this was pre-Disney buying Marvel.
Yeah. So, but they did link it to the films, which is cool. And I know
Was it post? No, did Disney? Is the original Avengers and Iron Man and stuff all that? Is that Disney? Like the first four? But was that? Had Disney owned it at that point? Led up to the Avengers? At what point did Disney buy Marvel?
Kevin should be writing. We'll write it now.
Yeah, he'll tell us.
It was. We can see it all day.
He'll
Google it.
I'll Google
so,
it.
in the meantime, we get to Born Again.
Yeah.
Because 6 years ago, they thought they were going to get a full season, and then Netflix pulled the plug, and everyone's gutted. The cast didn't know, the fans didn't know, in a similar vein to Firefly being binned after a season, and then there was just nothing. And what Disney have decided to pull them back. Hooray! Which for me, very similar to Adam saying, I'm superhero fatigued a little bit, to say the least.
Yeah, got you.
So I'm not fussed about capes. I'm not fussed about. No offense to DC, I don't care about Superman.
2009 is when they bought Marvel.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what was the first? 2009.
2009 is when.
Okay, so that was post Guardians. Guardians came out in 2000. No, it wasn't. Hang on. 2000.
Hang on.
Toby. Okay.
So Iron Man was 2008.
Just after Iron Man.
Yeah.
Interesting. So early doors.
Yeah.
Okay. You don't need to write in now, Kevin. Should be writing. Get on with your book. But it was really interesting from a plot perspective because they wrapped up things in a good way, in a healthy way for all the characters. For Foggy, for Karen, for Matt. Fisk was in trouble.
Yeah.
Bullseye was dealt with. Bullseye was in season 3 as the villain. And hooray! So even though they were hoping to do more, but it was obvious it felt concluded, even if they then started a new story arc, and then nothing happened. And then finally, Marvel got the rights back, and we've had Charlie Cox turn up in She-Hulk, we've had Charlie Cox turn up in Spider-Man, we've had Charlie Cox turn up in Echo.
Yeah.
Fisk was in Echo, Fisk was in Hawkeye. The same actors too, which is really nice because actually they didn't have to do these things, different iterations of them. And then we get Born Again, finally, after 6 years waiting.
Which is nice to see him get his own show back. You know, it's nice to see
and it was worth it. And what I love about this show, so Adam and I have both seen at least the first episode.
Yeah.
What I do like about this show, and it is worth your time, because if you've had superhero fatigue and you think, more
costumes and I-beams and
you've had
interdimensional rifts and wizards.
Here. Two bearded men here are sitting here going, there's enough, too much, and actually saturation. And things like Secret Invasion were a mess.
I didn't watch Secret Invasion. I haven't watched Brave New World, like the latest film. Like I think the last Marvel movie I actually went and watched was Guardians 2.
3?
Guardians 3.
Was it 3?
Yeah, with the Rocket Raccoon stuff.
3.
Yeah.
I was going to say, blimey.
That was the last one I went to see in the cinema.
So what my point is, if you've had superhero fatigue or Marvel fatigue, because they are putting out more content and quality these days, or have been, this is worth your time. And I was thinking this when I was watching it, particularly the first episode, and this is a bold statement. Is this the Andor of the Marvel world? And by that I mean, when I watched Andor, it was grown up, it was slow paced, it was thoughtful, they didn't rush it, they didn't try
Well,
and
that
do
was
anything.
what separated the original Netflix stuff from other things, is that it was definitely an adult story.
Yeah.
It was gritty as all hell, and it was, not afraid to split bones and,
And they've
all
talked
that
about
sort of
that,
stuff.
because this is technically rated 18. it's not quite.
I saw an interesting comment about Born Again.
Yeah.
And it was like, as good as it is, does it not feel? And obviously, I've only seen episode 1. Whole series isn't out yet. You know, it's something that maybe you can look back on when the whole series is done. Is it not sort of Disney going, remember we used to be edgy? Remember this character used to be edgy? But it's quite like the guy who put this comment on Instagram, X, whatever it is, Blue Sky, and basically said like the CGI, the fight scenes, you know, things like that, like are just a bit Disney-ish compared to the previous Netflix stuff. It's like it's trying to be Netflix stuff, but it's not quite there because obviously they can't make it as nasty.
I was thinking this myself
as the Netflix stuff, because the Netflix stuff was definitely an 18.
It was one of those things because I was thinking that the Netflix stuff was, and in the opening scene, there's a battle with Bullseye.
Yeah.
And
there's a bit of blood.
As they're running up the stairwell, I was watching this on purpose, and then halfway up the stairwell,
he's throwing knives at him and all sorts.
But what's interesting is the knives are stuck in him. There's lots of knives, and he's clearing a lot of pain. And I thought on the Netflix show, you'd have seen them go in.
Yeah.
You'd have physically seen them go in, which doesn't matter. And I was thinking back to when they did the
Doesn't he do something where just go into that scene where he like kicks a pool ball into the air, and then like flicks it out and smashes it off the guy's head? And it's like, whoa, that's nasty.
But what was in it with the Winter Soldier, Falcon and the Winter Soldier show, when they originally aired it, there's a scene in the container ships in one of the episodes, where there's a lot more of knives being dug in and bullets spray, right?
Yeah.
And then Kevin should be writing, Tom, if you notice they've edited it. It's like the whole thing had been aired. You go back and watch it now, and they've taken all the gore out, so you can't stream it with gore. And it wasn't a lot of gore; it's 12A gore.
Yeah.
But they've taken
a little bit of blood spray, a little bit of red mist.
They've taken it all out. And I can't think. I mean, outside of complaints.
Yeah.
So I wondered myself what your comment about the gore, because it isn't quite, and I'm trying to decide whether that matters.
And I think this is one of the curses of this: everything must tie into everything, because then everything has to be at a level. Everything has to be as an accessible level for young kids. You know, you have to be able to sit and watch this stuff with your teenager or whatever, without it causing a problem. Whereas previously, if I had like an 11-year-old child or something like that, I'd be like, "You're not watching the Netflix Daredevil stuff; it's gnarly." No, do you know what I mean?
I refinished Punisher last night. Punisher's more gnarly than Daredevil.
Yeah,
and more gory, more violent, more disgusting.
But, John Bernthal is
so it'll be interesting
savage,
to see. And they've announced that obviously Bernthal's in this show, not yet, but he's turning.
No, he's in the trailer, isn't he?
But also, he's getting his own one shot, like they did Werewolf by Night.
Okay.
Apparently. So it's only going to be like a 90-minute special or an hour special, and it'd be interesting to see, because you're right, it works. If you compare Fisk fighting in Hawkeye when he fights Kate Bishop, compared to him smashing the guy's head in season 1 of Netflix. But I'm tryring to decide.
But when he like gorilla punches Frank Castle in prison in the weight bench. Yeah. In the second, I think it's second or third season. Yeah, and he's fighting him in the gym in prison.
I'm trying to decide whether it matters. Does it matter? Because it's still good.
No, I don't think it doesn't matter in the sense of like it's not affecting the quality of the storytelling or the show and things. What it does is where I think we've been used to a certain standard with, and it's only going to affect people like us who have watched it from day one when it first came out and stuff. Newer people coming in and watching it, having never heard of this character before, is just going to think, oh, this is a bit more violent than your regular. This is a bit more violent than
Agatha all along.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas us who are a bit like, we're used to Daredevil, like relocate his shoulder after falling off a building and punching people so their arms breaking arms. You watched him getting stitched together, people throwing boiling coffee over each other and stuff like that. It's gone from a sort of a Watchmen level of sort of savagery to a bit more sort of implied savagery, shall we say?
And what it is, and I don't know, because the story is good and it feels grown up.
Yeah.
And it feels like I want it to feel. It isn't the Netflix stuff, and that's okay because new showrunners, new story writers, and I can cope with Disney stuff.
Yeah.
Because, and you'll hate me for saying this. You won't hate me for saying this, but you will. I really didn't enjoy She-Hulk. and he was his writing. Cox was great, but the writing for She-Hulk, that's not the Daredevil I wanted to see.
Right.
Or the Matt Murdock I wanted to see, because it's, you can.
So okay, well that leads on to a bigger question then. So, what is your perception of like what Matt Murdock should be? What do you want out of your
my vibe that I get from both TV or comic?
Just the character in general, across all forms of media. Like, what is it? What sings to you about that character?
The tone-wise, the Netflix vibe.
Mm-hmm.
Tone-wise, the Bendis stuff and the Brubaker writing.
Yeah.
So, what I find the reason, and he has become, since having said I couldn't gel with him and I watched the show and then went back to read the comics, he is now my favourite comic book character of all time. Period.
Okay.
Across all. I wasn't
expecting. Across all of them?
Yeah.
Ooh.
So I wasn't
heavy.
And he was always Cap. And then he got...
Captain America,
he always put to number 2. Because I love The Winter Soldier as a book, not the character. The character's cool. And that's another Brubaker, and I've read that one. There's an amazing Survivor one, Eternal one, Cap's the right kind of vibe. That matches the vibe with Daredevil. For me, the thing that fascinates me about the character is the juxtaposition between the lawyer and the vigilante.
Yeah.
And also the violence and the Catholic.
Yeah.
Which I don't think they're going to look at the religion so much in this show, but some of the best stuff in the Netflix stuff.
It's quite an important part of his character.
Well,
though.
Yeah, exactly. And in the Netflix show, and I wrote the guy's name down because I loved it. Where is his name? The guy who played Father Lantern.
Mm-hmm.
The religious scenes, the church scenes where he just goes to have
it's confession and
the confession stuff. They were some of the most vital parts of that character. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if you're religious or not.
No, but Matt Murdock is.
And Matt Murdock
raised Catholic.
And that actor, I thought was amazing.
And, spoilers to a degree, I forget exactly where it is in the... Bear in mind, Daredevil's been around since the 60s.
We're just going to assume...
He's a golden age superhero along the lines of Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four and the X-Men. But he becomes a priest at one point. He becomes Father Matthew. But he's still the Daredevil vigilante, I think. But he stops being a lawyer and becomes a priest.
Interesting. Because that for me is the tone. I think that the darkness of it, the inner turmoil that he goes through is what I've always joked on the podcast about twisted religion, what that's just about. And there is something about that juxtaposition of the religion stuff, which obviously not Catholic that I grew up with, and also just seeing how you can justify X with Y, and how you then feel guilt about it, and the Catholic guilt that you always felt. And I think that, but also the tone of the criminality, the street level, which is why I prefer it to capes and laser beams.
Yeah,
because it's. I know it's not grounded because the guy.
No, but it's muggings, it's crime rings, it's it's drug dealing, it's stuff like that, and it's more stuff that will affect people like us as human beings living in a city, so it's immediately got that sort of, I've seen shifty drug deals and I've seen, knife crime or whatever. I mean, luckily I haven't seen.
And I live around the corner from a Catholic church with a monastery next to it.
Exactly.
Full of monks, it's bizarre.
Yeah, exactly. But I haven't seen aliens fighting people or rogue governments or big monsters catching tank missiles and throwing them back at people and stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. What makes him Daredevil for you?
So there's 3 aspects of the character that really sing to me as it separates him from your other street level sort of heroes.
Yeah.
In other media and stuff. Because arguably, you could call Batman a street level hero.
Yes.
Until he joins the Justice League and then he's off fighting aliens and stuff.
Yeah.
But you think of his pantheon of rogues gallery and stuff, it's all street level criminals, isn't it, really? But Daredevil is what sings to me is the turning disability into a strength. I find that really interesting. And then using that as part of the identity.
Yeah.
Like, I'm an unassuming blind man.
No one's going to think I'm a superhero because they'll never think about me being the superhero.
They'll pity me and things like that, which is something that was played on a lot in the early episodes of the Netflix TV show and things. Obviously, since then, he's, the relationship he had with his father.
Yeah.
With the sort of dad was a boxer, but was a bad gambler and got himself into trouble and most of what I do is revenge for that, but it also affects like his way he fights and things, you know, which is very scrappy, very, you know, and that something that sings to me as well is like, I don't want to see one of these perfect superheroes who's just like, I can take whatever punishment you give and it means nothing. Like at the end of, and it's one of the reasons why, and we'll cover this when we talk about Invincible in a later episode and things, it's one of the reasons why I really like people like Matt Murdock is because at the end of a fight they're knackered. They've had the shit kicked out of them. They're like, he's like, I'm just a guy. Like, whoa, that was heavy. Like,
and I'm going to have to recover for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, whereas you watch Infinity War and you see Cap, Iron Man, and Thor fighting Thanos, and it's like, yeah, that's really cool, but the stakes are pretty low. One of them's a god. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, so yeah, watching that is it. The way he is a real womanizer as well is a very Matt Murdock trait.
We do not
no, we don't.
Womanizing,
but he is. God, he's a man whore, isn't he?
He does,
but that is his character.
He does sit around with quite a
hell yeah, he does, and even more so in the comic books. You know, as I say, like he's had relationships with Black Widow and She-Hulk in the TV series. There's basically every female character in Marvel at some point has been in bed with Matt Murdock at some point. But yeah, that's that about him. And that whole the street level crime thing. That's what it is. And then his relationship that ties him in as a grounded, and it helps other heroes become more grounded. Yeah. So the fact that he is the lawyer of Peter Parker, like, makes Spider-Man more relatable. Do you know what I mean?
You need a lawyer all of a sudden,
I will tie that into there, and like, you know, sort of bringing the criminals in that he fights on the street to the courtroom and having that sort of two-way. You know, I really like that about him, which was focused a lot in the Netflix stuff, especially the first sort of season of it and things. There was a lot of criminal sort of law drama. Yeah, and then you bribed your way out of prison, so now I'm going to beat you up.
No, and that's what works about the whole thing, including Born Again so far. Yeah, is that it takes its time. Born Again in the opening 10 minutes, he puts the suit on. Yeah. But apart from that, you barely see him in the suit, which I always loved.
He gives it up, doesn't he?
Yeah, because he gives it up. But even in the original show that we had, and a lot of the graphic novel stuff, it's a 50-50 split between Murdock and Daredevil. Yeah. And they do overlap with each other. Oh, yeah. They do, one affects the other.
But like you get, when you watch something like, or read a comic book like Spider-Man, to use it as an example, it's about a 70-30 Spider-Man to Parker split. You know, you're reading it for Spider-Man, you're not reading it for Parker.
Yeah, and I like
whereas I am reading this for a 50-50 Matt Murdock as an interesting man to Daredevil, the man without fear. You know, it's
definitely. And the other thing I've just realised as you were telling me your thing about Murdock and his dad, looking back at season 1 of the show, and all of them, why I haven't spotted, it's one of those things where you go, oh, of course, Fisk and his dad as well was a major thing, which I knew was a major thing, but I hadn't gone, oh, look, they both got daddy issues. They both got daddy issues, different reasons, but it's like, okay.
Spoilers, guys, but Fisk kills his father, doesn't he? That's how it goes for him, isn't it? Yeah.
With a large hammer.
With a hammer, yeah.
As a kid.
He killed his mum as well?
No.
Forget that.
He puts his mum at home at the time. She's
right.
A plot point.
That's right, and dad was abusive and all that,
Yeah. So,
whereas Matthew Murdock's dad was incredibly like nurturing and, you know, loved his son and looked after him, and still ended up getting in bad with gambling and got killed by gangsters.
And then the other side of it, spoilers for those who care, fast forward, then when he meets his mum in season 3, you get that entire relationship thing again, which I think is but yeah, so Born Again works for all those reasons. It's grounded. I mean, clearly, as Adam said, there's only 2 episodes in, so who knows
where it'll go. In episode 3, you could have the bloody Skrull turn up, and Fisk has been a Skrull the whole time, and the aliens are going to rock in.
What's interesting, what I'm having read, because it's not based on Born Again, the comic book, which
Frank Miller, wasn't it?
That's Frank Miller, and that story, I may have said in the podcast or earlier before we recorded, that story is what they used as a loose frame for season 3.
Yeah.
This
Well,
is
Frank Miller, as a comic book author, is one of the grittiest comic book authors there is. I mean, for those of you who don't know much about Frank Miller, if you've ever seen the movie Sin City, that was Frank Miller. To give you an idea, yeah, Dark Knight Rises was Frank Miller. So those sort of things is what his bag is. So for the fact that he's writing Daredevil, to give you an idea of how gritty it could be, sort of thing.
So this stuff, this new show is based on the Charles Soule Mayor Fisk run.
Yep.
Which is not a spoiler because it's in the trailer that he becomes mayor.
Yep.
And it's an interesting thing because in the comic, which I've just read, and what I'm looking forward to about the show is seeing Muse as a bad guy. Who I think looks a really cool bad guy.
Seeing who as a bad guy?
Muse. Who is this guy who wears, similar to a Rorschach, I haven't pronounced it, mask.
Rorschach.
Thank you, that's the word, Rorschach. And basically kills people and uses their bodies for art.
Oh, okay.
And leaves them with crime.
Sander Cohen from Borderlands.
So,
Bioshock.
It's one of those darker bad guys.
Yeah.
It has a...
Which you get in comics, like, you know, you get in these sort of street level criminals, like crime fighters, like you wouldn't get... I couldn't picture Spider-Man going up against a serial killer. Do you know what I mean? I couldn't picture Batman doing it, because he does.
It just feels to me like a Batman.
You know, picture Daredevil doing it, I could picture Moon Knight doing that, but I couldn't picture the Fantastic Four going up against someone who dismembers people and strings body parts around and stuff like that, or even the X-Men and things like that, because it's too clean. Everything must be clean. Do you know what I mean? Even like the over-the-top ultra-violence that are in things like Deadpool. Like Deadpool doesn't go up against, you know, grim, horrible sort of. Really, he usually is the grim, horrible thing. Deadpool goes up against ridiculously over-the-top characters like Thanos or Death itself, or you know these. Sort of...
So here's a question for you, because I've thought about this. You raising Deadpool with me.
Yeah.
Going back to our violence question, right? Disney not liking the violence, Disney fine, right? You look at the recent Deadpool film that Disney owned.
Mm-hmm.
It was slapstick gore, but it was gore.
It's over the top.
It was over the top.
It was samurai movie, Quentin Tarantino, Kill Bill levels of gore.
But it wasn't Punisher gore.
No.
But it was still more gory than Born Again.
Yeah.
So why do you think Disney are okay with that? And not okay with
I think
Born Again?
because it's part. I think.
I don't know the answer.
No, I don't know. The only thing I can kind of think about with it is that, like, the gore that you would get and the sort of the violence that you would get in something that's relatable to the point where it's two blokes beating the ever-loving crap out of each other and throwing knives at each other and things like that is different to the sort of things where you know that both of the characters who are fighting in Deadpool can be sliced in half and get back up again.
Yeah.
You know?
They are, in theory, invincible, so what does it matter?
So what does it matter what it looks like?
And it's also funny.
Yeah.
It's meant to be
However,
funny.
you know, like... There's and let's credit where credit's due and things. There's been scenes in X-Men and things like that where, you know, some really violent, horrible stuff has happened. You know, like the classic is Wolverine going up against Magneto and him just removing his entire skeleton out of his body. It's
weird,
and it happens in the comic, and it's absolutely gnarly. Or the Hulk tearing him in half and throwing him, you know, and stuff. Like,
and it's. I'm sat here thinking, why is that okay for Disney to do it? As in, why do they think? Where's the line for?
I think it's just because it's so over the top. It's like, you know,
you're
very unlikely.
Serious.
Yeah, you're very unlikely to see someone slash someone else up with a katana in your day-to-day life.
Yeah.
Whereas you could see someone get stabbed.
And it'll be interesting if, and I don't think they are, but they're rumour mills. They're always rumour mills. If they bring someone back like Jessica Jones within the MCU, who clearly takes pictures of people cheating on their wives.
Yeah, private eye.
Whether they do, I mean, that was the classic. She was always drunk.
Yeah.
Always drunk in that show.
Alcoholic. She's an alcoholic. She's a private eye. She's strong as all fuck.
And that is her character. So you can't take the alcoholism away from. I mean, they did it. Well, Tony Stark was also an alcoholic.
And they kind of dabbled with that in Iron Man 3, didn't they? Yeah. But it was over very quickly. Yeah. It was like, oh look, he's embarrassed himself at a party. I better stop drinking. Whereas that's an entire comic book arc of, you know, Tony Stark, billionaire playboy, being a raging alcoholic and doing horrible things to people.
They get near to a subject matter and then they run away from it.
It's too real then, isn't it?
But and I'm not trying to be cynical. It's just fascinating. But the violence and I wrote in my notes the Deadpool thing. So when you said it, it reminded me because actually they're happy with it being funny gore, slapstick gore, but not earnest adult.
Yeah, I mean, doesn't I forget her name now? Doesn't the lady in Deadpool 3, Deadpool Wolverine, turn Johnny Storm inside out?
Yeah,
Like just slats him.
Like, stops the only person to stop Chris Evans talking.
Yeah,
because he talks a lot in that film.
Yeah.
Interesting. So it's worth a look. Do you know the other things I've realised with this is the violence isn't as violent.
No, and we've talked about the violence aspect a lot today, but I don't want people to think that that's the reason why this show is worth your time.
No, I mean, that's
and it's not. It's that punctuates what makes these characters so sort of real.
Yeah,
or so sort of like, okay, yeah, I get it. It's a crime drama, and that was one of the things that I really liked about the first season of the Netflix stuff for Daredevil was that, and the books is that it's a crime drama first, a superhero, or even not even a superhero, really, a hero story, vigilante story second.
Yeah, In fact, you've hit the nail on the head there. But actually, that's why it works for me. It's a procedural courtroom drama, investigation, police thing. You've put words from my muddled head into the line. I looked at IMDb earlier for their listing, and they've got the listings of all the themes, the genres.
Yeah.
Under the show.
It's a noir crime
superhero.
thriller.
It's like 8th on the list.
Yeah.
Out of 10.
Because he's not really, is he? He's got super senses, and he's good at fighting, and that's about it. And he's not scared of anything.
No. It's well worth your time. My last point on the action, because you're right, we talk about action, whatever you want to call it. They've got the same stunt coordinator back as season 1 and 2.
Oh, good, because it had some of the most iconic scenes in like action. Yeah. Action
regardless
film.
of what vibe of it.
Yeah,
it's the same guys.
TV anyway.
It feels the same.
There's and you can see the influences. So the big one in season 1 of Daredevil, the Netflix one, is the corridor scene.
Yeah,
quite early.
The Wanna. They're famous for their Wannas.
Which is a one shot sort of
one take. Yeah, you follow the camera through.
And that's exactly the same from a different angle as the Korean film Old Boy. Have you seen Old Boy?
Yes.
Like, where he's got the hammer in the corridor and fighting all those dudes. Yeah.
I never bothered with the Josh Brolin.
Oh, I never watched that either, but I watched the Korean one. It was very good.
No, it was interesting. I was reading because my other reason for loving it is clearly two of my favourite directors. I was watching an interview today where they talked about the Wanna from episode 1.
Yeah.
Where the Bullseye Daredevil fight. And it is a Wanna, but it's not frenetic.
From Born Again, this one we just watched,
it's not frenetic.
No, it's not.
They were saying it on purpose because that's what everyone wants, and you don't know where the camera's going. And we chose to do it slowly, and it's literally they call it on the rails, and not because that's the technical term. But it's like a train ride because it's basically you don't ever pan away.
No. You see different aspects of it. So you see like the cop coming in and picking up the person, bringing them out,
also,
and then Bullseye gets thrown through a wall or thrown through like a barrier or whatever. It's not a wall.
But they said it was interesting. They said that the freneticness means you don't know what's happening with this scene, and when you watch it, and we're going to avoid spoilers particularly, I guess, because we haven't said it so far. There's a big spoiler in episode 1, and you kind of get the vibe that something bad is going to happen.
Yeah.
And everyone's kind of like, ugh. And he said, because we did it slowly, you can't get off the ride. You just have to let it happen. And you have to follow it, even though you know it's getting more uncomfortable. And it's not like with a frenetic one where you bounce the camera around. They went, you don't know what's coming here. Everyone knew what was going to happen by the time you're halfway through that fight.
Yeah. And
they still just make you go through the process.
Well, saying that, I didn't think the fight would end the way it did. Like, I am obviously spoilers, guys, but like, I didn't think that Matt would push him off the roof. Yeah. Which was like, whoa, okay. Like, because you kind of think, and I think, again, that's what separates Matt Murdock from other similar characters, is that Spider-Man has a code, you don't kill people. Batman has a code, you don't kill people.
And so does Daredevil.
Up until then. Like, where you're just like, okay, I'll push it through.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh.
No, yeah, I thought it looked stunning.
Yeah.
New York. And the other thing I love about the show, and the comic book was fascinating. Like, if you watch the Batman film, Gotham City is Gotham City. There's something about Daredevil's New York that is as much of a character.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. Whether it happens in the writing, it happens in the show. It happens more in the show
having
than
a
in
look
Spider-Man
at
or the Avengers.
the map of Manhattan and New York and stuff, like Hell's Kitchen is like 4 blocks. It's a tiny little section of like, you know, the actual part of this bit in the city. It's huge. But like, you know, obviously being a bit of a nerd and fan of this sort of stuff, and you go and you know, I've been on Google Maps and I look at Hell's Kitchen and that, and it's tiny. It's a tiny little part of New York.
Yeah, but it's there's something about the vibe of the city. There's something about the vibe that is as much, and that stood out for me in this show as well. And they filmed it differently, and it's 8 years worth of tech in terms of camera upgrades and whatever, and who's the new DP and the director's choices. But it's well worth your time.
It is. There's a bit of a thing with it, and one of the things with it, and I'm not sure how they're going to go about this going forward, and it's something I mentioned to my wife when we were watching the first episode. There's a scene in the first episode where Wilson Fisk has obviously become mayor, and one of his first sort of like, you know, mayoral sort of decisions is like, right, no more costumed heroes. And I'm thinking, okay, that's all well and good for characters like Daredevil, but you've got the Sorcerer Supreme lives around the corner. He's in New York. You've got Avengers Tower over there.
Why Miss Marvel isn't in it a lot.
You've got the Baxter Building is in New York. Like just outside the city in upstate New York is Charles Xavier's School for Gifted Mutants and Gifted Children. And it's like, how are you going to do with them?
Last season you were employing costume heroes to be bad guys for you.
I mean, you could possibly take Daredevil and maybe Spider-Man. If it came down to it, but Spider-Man pulls his punches. He can knock your head off if he wanted to.
No,
what are you going to do about a wizard who can stop time? Like,
it's baffling, isn't it? It's where there's no logic.
No, so I'm interested to see what he does with that. Does he shut down Avengers Tower?
Well, yeah. Someone. Oh, it's been bought.
It's been bought
by the Thunderbolts.
Oh, it's been bought.
It's in the trailer,
right?
Because they use it.
Okay, right.
So that one, I mean, he sold it when he bought that. That's been sold for ages. Because after, here's a geek fact: Avengers Tower. By the time they moved to the compound, he's already sold Avengers Tower.
Who has? Who's sold? Stark sold. But Stark's dead.
Yeah, but he got when they.
This is like the Avengers dying will and testament. If Thanos kills me, sell Avengers Tower.
The Avengers compound that was bought, and they used it in whichever Avengers Infinity War, definitely.
Well, there's the little like sort of out in the woods sort of. With, I'm thinking the Ant-Man movie where he has to bust in and steal stuff, and the Falcon turns up. Remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that.
Is that the compound you're talking about?
No, I don't. Yes, but it's not a small compound.
No,
it's the one where Thor disappears and Stark turns up, and they make the Infinity Gauntlet. Blah, blah, blah.
Oh, okay.
That one.
Yeah.
So he's already sold Stark Tower before he dies. I think someone will tell me I'm wrong. That's what I think happens. But anyway, from the new trailer for Thunderbolts, Louise Dreyfus, what she's called,
Julia Louise Dreyfus,
has made some speech about. We couldn't let it go, could we?
It's an iconic piece of architecture in New York City.
Indeed, it's.
Are you excited for Thunderbolts? Are you going to watch it? Are you going to watch it in the cinema?
I am more excited. Is probably the wrong word. I'm more excited, and having seen Brave New World,
I haven't.
Out of the two, out of the three that are coming this year, so which is Fantastic Four last, which clearly.
I'm up for that.
I'm interested to watch it.
I love the Fantastic Four, and they've never been done justice in a film. There's good parts about the first one. I've not seen the Michael B. Jordan one, but I hear it's awful.
It's one of those things. So Captain America, I wanted to watch for the sake of seeing it.
Yep.
But it wasn't very good.
Right.
And it didn't do them justice. Spoilers, Harrison Ford is one and done.
Oh, of course he is. He doesn't like doing anything like this anymore anyway. He doesn't need to.
And it's not one and done as an
the whole reason he came back for Han Solo is he on the condition that he gets killed. Because I don't want to do acting anymore. So I'm done.
I'll tell you why Thunderbolts interests me is because I like Winter Soldier.
Yep.
I like Yelena.
Yep.
And I like Red Guardian.
Okay.
As characters and as actors, I think they're interesting.
David Harbour, Florence Pugh, and Sebastian Stan.
Yeah. Here's a random going back to Daredevil. The dude that plays Bullseye was nearly cast as Captain America.
Interesting.
He got very far in the process of being him and Chris Evans, or him and someone else and Chris Evans.
He went to Chris Evans.
Wow. Could have been, which is fascinating because I didn't realise he'd been. There's a link back to
That's
cool. So I am looking forward to Thunderbolts. It's going to be fodder, as they all are.
Yeah.
and it's because it's more grounded again. Because it isn't. No one's got. Well, there's the lady who can turn herself invisible.
Ghost or whatever. Yeah.
There's your Kiki Yelena.
Yeah.
Your fat pizza eating beard growing man. Love it.
Red Guardian.
Yeah.
He's Captain America, though, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's Captain Russia.
Yeah, but it's fine. It's punchy, kicky. Yes, he's super strong, but it's close enough.
That
to normal.
is a complete parody of one of the best Superman stories I've ever read.
What, the Russia thing?
Yeah, where instead of Clark Kent landing in Kansas from Krypton, he lands in Moscow.
Have you read the book?
Yeah, and it's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's the weapon of the USSR, and it's like, wow, okay, Soviet Superman and Soviet Batman, who looks great. He's just Batman.
Yeah, I've got the Funko.
Batman with a Yushenka on. It's like, that's great.
Yeah, when I saw it on the shelf, I'm grabbing that fucking. So I am looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the rest of the show.
Yeah,
I'm hoping it's good. I'm also encouraged because Brian Michael Bendis, who is a big Daredevil writer and Spider-Man writer, is a producer or a consultant on the show.
Okay.
So
he's probably written Thunderbolts at some point.
Yeah, and I know that Ed Brubaker, I thought he was a producer on Winter Soldier the film, but he wasn't. But I think he was a consultant on the film,
right?
And he wrote Winter Soldier. So, and that means that you're at least asking the right people.
Yeah,
because when
you're trying to get the right vibe.
Because they scrapped Daredevil. What I respect about this show is that they were scrapping Daredevil. They started filming it, and apparently they scrapped what they filmed and started from scratch.
Okay.
Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio, who pushed for this, there was going to be no mention of anything that happened in the first 3 seasons.
Right.
Or characters.
Okay.
And it was at their request that they pushed to get Karen and Foggy back.
Yeah, okay.
And it was just going to be its own Disney thing.
I tell you what, man, that first scene where the 3 of them, no spoilers, the first scene of the first episode of Born Again, when the 3 of them leave Murdoch, Nelson and Paige, I was like, oh, lovely, oh, great, fantastic. Yeah, I love those guys, they're great. Yeah, didn't feel like that about 20 minutes in, but like it was like, oh, they're back. That's great, and yeah, that was worth it for that. I think
it's worth. It's not. I think definitely Adam's hit on the head. It's not a superhero show. It's a procedural show that happens to have some fighting in it as well. So take
with
that.
Some costumes on.
Take that as you will.
If you go back and watch the Netflix stuff, he doesn't even get his proper costume until like the end of the season.
That's the last episode. Literally the last episode.
He's just in like a black t-shirt and arm wraps.
Do you not miss who's the dude? I loved it. The guy who makes him the outfit. What's he called? Because he's from the comics.
Yeah, it's not Stick.
Melvin.
Is it? Yes, Melvin.
He's great.
Yeah,
I love Melvin, but he was a bad boy in season 3.
Yes, indeed.
So the short answer, 52 minutes later, is give it a go. But I've got before we leave, before we wrap up, I've got a question for you from a. You might not be able to answer this, but it'll be interesting.
Leaving you with some top quality content.
If people want to read it,
yeah,
because the show is the show, it's on TV.
Mm-hmm.
What should they read?
Well, my favourite stuff is the Brian Michael Bendis, The Man Without Fear run. Let me just find it from Google. When it came out and things. The Man Without Fear, was Frank Miller.
Yeah.
And it's very good.
That is very good, and that is worth it. It's all the early Dawn stuff, the old school drawing.
Yeah.
I love that old school artwork. When you can read a comic and you tell the hero it's drawing it, that vibe, it's like, okay, it's the 70s, 80s vibe.
The 2008 run of Daredevil, The Man Without Fear by Brian Michael Bendis and drawn by Maleev. I've got them and I've lent them to you at some point. I think if I've not already lent them to you, I will do. Yeah. It's 3 graphic novels for the whole story, and it's fantastic. And it's basically the plot of the TV show, the Netflix stuff.
Okay.
To a degree. It's 4.8 out of 5 is the reviews on sort of Google.
Is it a good starting point?
Yeah, I think so.
The thing with graphic novels is, particularly with the runners,
it introduces you to a lot of interesting characters.
Jumping in the mid storyline, it's really hard.
No, it's not an origin story, so he's already Daredevil at this point. But obviously it goes back into a lot of confessional stuff of him talking about his childhood and his father and things like that. But it's more about, it's the introduction of Wilson Fisk as a big bad.
Okay.
In a more modern telling, because Wilson Fisk has been around as long as Daredevil's been around, which has been like from the 60s. One of the things that really punctuated it for me is one of the best stories to read for Daredevil is there's at the end of, I forget which series it is in the TV shows, it's series 2, where he's fighting Fisk in the alleyway.
What?
Series 1.
I can't remember.
He's having a proper, like, just Matt Murdock and Fisk are going at it in an alleyway.
Yeah, that's the end of 1. That's when he gets his suit.
Right, okay.
They arrested.
So that scene, that happens in the Bendis books. Right. And what they did that was a really nice thing is they got every artist who's drawn Devil since the 60s to do one panel of that fight. So every single panel of that fight is a completely different art style. And it's from all of the artists who have done Daredevil over the years.
Nice.
So, and it's really cool.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
That would be worth putting up on your wall.
Yeah. I mean, it's about 5 or 6... 10 pages long or whatever because of proper scrapping, but like
nice.
Every single every single panel is done by a different artist, which looks great.
I would follow up that with coincidentally, the follow-on from the Bendis stuff. Ed Brubaker took over, and he is one of my favourite comic book writers, and he did write Winter Soldier, and he's written other stuff too, as well as Marvel. But he picked up the story where Bendis finished, and he's very much with Winter Soldier, very much 1970s conspiracy.
Yeah, it's a lot of like covert sleeper agents and all that sort of stuff. He's a big noir writer, isn't he? I mean, I lent you the Fade Out recently,
which is great.
Which is all very sort of gumshoes detective stuff.
So if you like the noir vibe, which is what Brubaker writes in a Daredevil setting,
great.
Then that's the vibe. I mean, I know Daredevil noir.
If you want to learn about him as a character and read something that you've seen on the TV and you might not have had any sort of real sort of context behind it, how big of an impact it had as a comic book rather than a film, Civil War. Read the Civil War comic book because Matt Murdock is instrumental in Civil War as leading the resistance against Tony Stark. And it's not 6 blokes fighting in a car park.
No,
it's
that was
it's the whole
that bit.
It's the whole superhero community going at each other, and it's huge because you've got all of the X-Men, you've got all of these different people, and it starts with Peter Parker revealing his identity to the world.
Yeah,
and Matt Murdock being like, "You need legal representation."
I'll make a quick dollar. No, it's not at all because he's not that. Yes, no, I agree. I haven't read that in a very long time.
But Murdoch's really important in that storyline.
And if you're interested in the stuff that's coming on the telly now, as I said, Charles is based loosely on Charles Soule's stuff. So it's Mayor Fisk run, and also I did some googling. I'm reading it now. He also wrote Seventh Circle, which is a Daredevil Punisher crossover. Yeah,
well, they are,
which is why
very aligned with each other anyway. Not morally, but
it's so they're the two. So Charles Soule is who you're looking for if you want to go to Waterstones or other bookshop and find stuff to read.
Yeah, there's a lot out there. The 2008 Bendis run is where I really fell in love with him and was like, this is banging.
So, hooray!
Yeah.
There we go. We rambled a lot about Spider-Man and then talked a bit about Daredevil.
A little bit.
And about violence.
Yeah.
Oh, and in season 2, because there is already a green light on season 2, Matthew Lillard's coming. That's also known.
Is he?
Don't know who has, but I thought, okay.
Scream. He's going to go up against Ghostface.
It'll just be Shaggy.
Yeah. Zoink, Scoof. Zoink's back.
And they'll get Cosmo to be, they'll get Cosmo as a crossover. Oh, and interesting, in episode 2, which you haven't seen.
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's a little, it's not
I'll be watching it this evening. So.
It's, my friend Michael texted me last night and said, did you notice the reference to it's not a big deal. There's a pothole that Fisk in his mayor duty helps to get fixed.
Yeah.
And and Michael told me, my friend Michael from America, you do realise that's the pothole from the Doc Ock fight.
Oh, cool.
But they don't mention that's what it is.
Yeah.
And I thought that's what makes
I like it. And that's one of the reasons why this stuff does work so well, because it ties in.
But they don't go
sprinkles.
There's no member berries.
No.
Do you remember that?
Yeah,
we had that
tiny subtle things.
And I thought, do you know what? And it's not a big spoiler. I wouldn't have told you.
No, of course.
Do you know, this is very cool. I like that. Well done, because it does overlap and tie in, like the newspapers.
Yeah.
Check it out. In the UK, it's every Wednesday.
I want to see just things I want to see in Daredevil going forward. I want to see a court battle between Matt Murdock and Jen, She-Hulk. I want to see lawyer off,
lawyering up. We have a Perry Mason episode where it's just
just in court.
That'd be great. Or you can't handle the truth. We'll have some sort of.
And then her picking up the desk and throwing it because she's huge. And
that'd be amazing. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. It's nice to be back.
Yay! He's back, everybody, which means I don't have to talk about it. I do that every day. Next time, Toby might be back. He's definitely back in the country.
Cool.
We've got an agenda. We're approaching the end of our first year. Do you remember what that means?
Yeah, I've got to see.
Yes, you have.
I do.
Were you impressed by Toby and Mai's choice of song last time?
No.
I got a text from Adam saying, "Bloody Bilbo Baggins." Because it works every time. You poke the bear and he snatches.
Yeah, apparently so.
It's been a pleasure.
Likewise.
Farewell from you.
Farewell from you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
See you later, guys. And don't forget to always...
wash behind your ears.